All right, so Amethyst Steel Doc was a guide that we kind of really started developing leading into the DLC for Vegas. Since then, we've kind of created a metafi guide for it. We've consistently been adding to it and discussing all of those points, even so much to a tier list that was released last week for it that Dick Burns himself covered. Today, the two of us are here to talk about the core of the deck and how we would build the deck moving forward into more of an unknown metagame. Of course, I can't do this one by myself, so I have the one, the only Mr. Burns, or better known as Mr. Dick Burns. So, how are you doing this evening, Dick?
Oh, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Sounds fun. So, this is a deck that, you and I have been playing since pre DLC Vegas at this point. Um, you just played it this past weekend. Didn't go exactly how you wanted it to. You still had a winning record, though. You went 4-2.
Yeah.
But it wasn't good enough for top eight. So, that was obviously still set five. We're moving into set six. And I think we've been having this conversation between the two of us, and we each said, "Hey, this is what I would make the deck look like. This is what I would make the deck look like." But I want to kind of go back to the beginning real quick and really just assert this concept of the core. So I want to take a look at this with you, and we were just talking about what is the actual core to this deck, and we're gonna break these down one by one. And I guess let's quickly cover the pre Azurite Sea cards. So we had Chernobog's Followers, Magic Broom, Madam Mim Snake, Mr. Smee, Madam Mim Fox, Pete, and Merlin, and of course the one, the only Doc. So these cards were basically, this is what the deck was founded on. It's what we built it on. What what about that combination of cards is a reason that we think that this is still a good choice to kind of build into and move forward with Azurite Sea?
Well, one of the big things right now is people still don't know how to play against it. They haven't paid for the metafy. But one of my opponents yesterday just was dumbfounded at the cards I was putting into play. He had to read a bunch of them. And it's just so low to the ground. It's an aggro deck that draws cards, which is so rare in any card game. It's not often that you have a deck that you're turning your card sideways every single turn, as well as inking every single turn for the entirety of the game, usually. So you don't get stuck in really awkward situations like you would playing something like Amethyst Amber, for instance.
Yeah, the continuation that Doc adds, and with the combination of the library, which is, one of the other kind of core cards here, is that it creates these not infinite, but it really does create this precious resource of ways to filter through your deck and just ways to pressure your opponent consistently throughout the game. And ironically, when this game is going on all cylinders, doc plus library is normally that's the key factor in any of those games where you're able to dock more than once. You're able to establish a library. We're able to put brooms and Chernobog's Followers on library and things like that. All of a sudden, we are just off to the races, and it almost feels like it is infinite, even though it's not. It's just kind of this endless loop that you put your opponent in, where every single turn you're like, I have five guys in play, they're all in the library. What are you going to do? Are you going to let me gain 8 lore, or are you going to remove my characters and I'm going to draw 5 cards, and we're just going to keep doing this over and over again? Um, our removal of choice are Fire the Cannons and Smash. How valuable do you think that these cards are still going to be moving forward?
Well, Diablo isn't banned yet, no matter what Twitter wants. So they're going to be very, very valuable. And this is one of the only decks that could play these two specifically without losing tempo. We don't have to play songs. We don't have to be susceptible to Ursula 2. And our opponents still have to play that card against us because it banishes our early characters. So they're just playing a vanilla 1/3 on turn 2.
We hope so. So with Azurite Sea, we kind of both came to an agreement. There were 2 new cards that felt like moving forward, they're going to be a core addition to this thing. So we have Diablo which is the one cost, zero strength, one willpower, one lore, and then the ability of Fly My Pet. When this character is banished, you draw a card. In previous versions, we had seen Cusco come up, as an idea. There was very early versions that like Maleficent Sorcerer was kind of filling this role, but the point is that it's just another character like Turnabox Followers and like Magic Broom that says, I cost one to play, I have one lore, and I'm gonna draw a card some way, somehow. The other edition is Mr. Arrow. Can you tell me what you like about Mr. Arrow?
It's just Mr. Smee. All the misters are the same. So, Mr. Smee, we're never healing it. We could theoretically bounce it to our hand and replay it, but that's the third best thing we could do with a bounce card, but behind Doc and Pete. So we really don't want to do that. So Mr. Smee is usually going to be a 3/2 on your opponent's turn, and or after you quest with it, and it's going to be a 3/3 the turn that you play it. Mr. Arrow is effectively a 1/3 the turn that you play it, and still has 3 health even after you quest with it.
Mhm.
So it could be really awkward if your opponent is sitting on like, I don't know, Magic Broom and a Flynn Rider. Like they can't just run them in there.
Yeah, ironically, we're losing the lore gain in that, maybe potentially, but he is just annoying enough that some of those opposing aggro decks, they're like, what do they do against a resist one on a two lore character? Like, it's not a fun time for them. They have to run their fox in more cases than not, which is like fine.
And Green Steel can't just let you quest with it once and then storm it.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah, there even not even that. Like it also it can't very easily just flat remove it either. It's a lot of what we did towards the end of Seattle was like we put Yen Sin in the deck and we put the 2/3 evasive room in the deck, and it was more like, hey, here's just 3 willpower dot deck. But Yen Sin was a conditional draw and a conditional gain lore. The broom was another way to interact with Diablo, and that still might be necessary, but I don't think it's part of the core anymore. This guy is just saying the same thing. Like, he's effectively a 1/3/4/2 with 2 lore always. So when we're trying to close out the game, he is like, probably him and Smee are like, they're like 1A and 1B of cards that we want to draw off our dock. And like,
yeah,
and
it's also
slam.
just like the perfect thing to draw off Doc. Like, just 2 lore, good luck.
Yeah,
Once you're docking, you probably have 12 to 14 lore. Like,
yeah,
you want Doc to be the last card that you play. If you have to discard things to Doc, hopefully it's just like a Fire the Cannons in a bad matchup for that card.
yeah. The notable thing here, of course, is that Fire the Cannons is our only uninkable that's part of the core. So, and I
We have
guess,
Doc.
oh yeah, he is an uninkable. My bad. That's true. That's very true. That's okay. He doesn't count
Even
though.
if he was inkable, we would never would.
I mean, that's insane.
He's
There's
so
no way.
valuable. Even if you have 2, he's so valuable in play because you can bounce him at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So talk to me a little bit about, what when you're building a deck. And it's really funny because I think it's a little more harder to do this now. And I think we've actually, in a weird way, gotten away from like that, like this explanation. But I actually think that you're perfect to explain this to people, because back in set 2 and set 3, Ruby Amethyst had the Amethyst bounce core, right? Like, that is what that deck was made of. This is not that, but it does ironically use like 3/4 of the pieces of it. Can you explain to me what a core is in deck building?
A core. Well, it's your starting point. It's like it's your foundation of the game. It's like, oh, I am playing Amethyst. These 16 cards are going in. At least when I first build the deck, we could trim them off later, stuff like
Mhm.
that. It also makes it so that no matter how many sets come out, you always have a direction to start with.
Yeah. I think that's the number one point there is, even though we just had 204 new cards come out, and we did say like, okay, there's 2 new cards that now have been attached to this core, but we've also probably removed cards that were a part of it. Befuddle comes to mind. Like, that was a card that originally in deck building were like, nope, this is a core to this deck and we need it. Now that's not necessarily true, but that might also have its own ramifications in deck building. So we might have to change some of our decisions moving forward. But I really just wanted to get the point across of this is where when we start building this deck from day one with no frame of reference, no frame of mind of what the metagame is going to turn out, more or less just utilizing the information we have, saying, okay, red blue still probably one of the best decks in the metagame. We got to make sure that we're still fast enough to beat red blue, and we can still pressure the game enough to beat red blue. Emerald Steel, still one of our worst matchups. Probably still going to need 4 smash in our deck in day one, for 4 fire the cannons, because that's good in pretty much every matchup, but it's still really good in that matchup. So it's things like that that we need to understand. Like, if these are the 2 best decks from the last format, then on day one, when we start building, we're going to build the core with that information. Obviously, in a couple weeks, maybe that changes because maybe brand new decks come out. Maybe the metagame shifts so far. Maybe Diablo does get banned. Spoilers. I don't think that's going to happen, guys. But in a perfect world, no, I'm just kidding. More on that later on another video, though. So if you're interested in that, we got some stuff coming for you. I promise. But for the purpose of this video, I want to really take time and build from this core for our day one version of this deck with just the kind of like understanding of what our best predictions will be going into this weekend. Now, in this weekend, we have an event that you and I are going to be commentating. It's a cap of 48 players, and people might want to bring this deck. People might want to just understand what this deck might look like for their locals that week and things like that. Or, there's a couple early tournaments coming on in the first couple weeks that you want to go to. This is what we're going to do. We're going to walk through this deck and kind of build it along with you, so you guys understand that this is where we would be early on with like a very minimal frame of reference as to what the metagame might actually be. Cool? Gonna get into it, Dick?
What are we getting into?
So we have on the side here the core, right? We've kind of now established that. Dick, for the opening weekend in the core itself, how many of these core cards do we think are 4 of?
Most of them. Possibly all of them. All of them except the 1-drops. You might not want all of those 1-drops. You definitely want 4 Diablo. And then some combination of the Chernobyls and Magic Brooms. It could be 8 of each. The Doc's definitely a 4 of. Mr. Arrow's a 4 of. The Madam Mims have to be a 4 of now because we cut the Befuddle. So if we want to have those crazy long games, we're going to have to bounce the Doc as many times as possible. And then later in the game, close it out by bouncing the Pete as much as possible.
On average, which of the 1-drops, either Churnabox followers or Magic Broom, do you think is more important?
I would rather have the Magic Broom because it survives me challenging opposing aggro decks better. Especially probably in a week 1, people are going to want to catch people off guard. As you alluded to in one of your previous videos, if people are going to be doing things like trying to ramp to 7 as fast as possible to discard your entire hand, or play like 20 microbots in their deck, you might just want to end the game instead of letting them deal with all that stuff.
All right, so what we have for now is a 50 card deck. I think that might be a little too high for me, but I think that's where we're going to start. And then we're going to now talk about the cards that we think that are just shoo-ins for sure. So let's go through the Amethyst ones real quickly. Do we think a card like the White Rose is a shoo-in?
No, I don't think it definitely makes the cut. I do love this card, though.
All right, we're going to add one just so we have a frame of reference.
We could always reduce it later.
This Tinkerbell with Evasive.
No, never.
No chance, right?
0%.
All right, 0%. I like the 0%. This Magic Carpet.
0%.
0%. This Genie.
That's a possibility. I would not play. I would not ever play more than 2.
Yep, I'm with you. Is there any other Amethyst card? Fairy Ship.
Fairy Ship 1.
All right, we'll put one in there. Let's go to steel. Let's go to our steel friends. All right, so this is me.
How about Mr. Big for a second? Because someone brought this up to me yesterday, and it's going to be 0%.
Where is
But
Mr. Big? Oh, okay. The four call? No, no way.
right, but in the last Metafy videos, I said if you have any suggestions,
Yep.
please give them to me. Someone gave it to me. That's going to be a
Well,
zero
okay. Well,
percent.
I gave you one that we actually skipped over here. I have
Right.
Madam Mim on my list.
Yeah, I think a week one, that's crazy. I think that is
I think you're
crazy
right.
talk. Yeah.
I think you're right.
I think that we need the meta to develop on that one.
Yeah. So,
I do think it's interesting, and I think it's only good if also a card like Calhoun is good.
yeah, I think that there's slightly more reasons than upside for her, but I do think that this card is more targeted to a much slower version of this deck. Ironically, I think it's I think I like legitimately built the anti to this deck within itself. I think that's
Yeah.
what I did. I was like, no, I'm gonna go to the next step. So if you guys watched like the most recent video of updates, you've already seen this list. But mine was more targeted of like, hey, I'm still gonna this aggro deck, but I'm gonna be like an anti aggro deck as well. I think that's where I was. So it's definitely a little bit different, a little bit off. But
Yeah,
this is
I
a
think
card that
that
I
this
would have on my
brain too
list.
much.
What?
I
My
think you
brain.
had this on the brain too much,
All right,
like
that's
while
very
you were
fair.
building.
It's very, very fair. But regardless, I think I would still have this card on my buy list because right now it says $3.63. I'll be honest, I would be shocked if that stays there. I bet you by the end of the weekend, this is less than $1. That would be my
Oh,
guess.
okay. When you said it stays there, I thought you meant it was going to go up, and I was about to bet you dessert. Like you
No,
don't even know.
no, no. I would be willing to bet that by the end of the weekend, this card is less than $1 or 50 cents. So that's probably one that I would wait on. I don't expect this card to come out swinging at all, but I do expect the card to be playable.
Yeah,
Um,
and
I
then
don't think there's anything
keep it in
else.
your binder.
Yeah, sure. Buy the four one.
Like get it. Maybe you read the room beforehand.
Very fair. All right. So Mr. Big, I don't recommend anyone buying this
Zero
card.
percent. Yeah.
Mr. Smee or Jafar.
No, never.
We don't care.
I would play the broom over either of those.
I would play the broom over either of those. I
Yeah.
agree. So there's another card here that I think that both of us have missed, and neither of us had included. It's this Pluto.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a good card. I just don't think it's good for us. You
Why?
like
How does this? What does this thing do?
it's a Lawrence, but it has bodyguard.
So while this character has no damage, it has 4 strength. So it's a 4 cost 5/4 with bodyguard.
Yeah. I think that in a vacuum, it's a good card. I don't know if how much play it's going to see this late into Disney Lorcana's existence. Like if it was printed in like set 3 or something, it's probably like a slam dunk.
Yeah, I don't think we're playing this card.
Right. I'm already a little sketched out on the goats, but like the fact that we have 4 goats, but there are too many times, especially without gathering, where
Yeah.
I'm just praying to Muhammad that I get a goat off the top. Like,
Um, let's see. I'm really just deciding if there's any other
oh,
guarantee.
there's a couple of
Gantu?
interesting cards. Gantu, I like Gantu as a one of.
Okay.
I think if
Okay.
you draw it before dock, you just ink it and you're happy that you don't have to ink a good card early. And then I think later you're in too many positions where you're at like 16 plus lore and you just need to be like, here's this, good luck.
Just slam.
Sometimes it's like, yes, I drew Doc, I drew 2 more characters, good luck. And they're
Yeah.
like, Sisu. And you're like, all right, you win 2-0. But
Done.
but like this just oddly dodges so many things.
Yeah.
I would see myself definitely playing one of this in the first couple weeks.
He's a beefcake.
Yeah. As Nunez says, stats.
Stats. Stats.
Stats.
Calhoun?
Hate it. I
Oh my god.
it's a good card. I don't like it in here. I think
All right.
it pigeonholes you so much.
Okay. Okay.
Captain Amelia, I
This
love this
chick?
card. Yeah. You can just hit the magnifying glass in the top right corner of the card.
Yeah, but now I got this.
Yeah, and then
All
you
right.
just hit
This character can't be challenged by pirates. How relevant is
that's
that?
the most important part.
Okay.
Let's keep reading instead.
While being challenged, your other characters gain resist 1.
Right.
Okay.
It's resist +1.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
if they
Sorry. My
already
bad.
have
Okay.
resist, it adds to it.
Yeah, so it makes
So
Mr. Arrow more annoying.
yeah, if we're ever, I don't think we're playing this week 1, but I would buy this card when it's $1 inevitably
Um,
in week 1,
okay,
because
so
if we're ever in a format where people are challenging instead of directly removing our cards, this is just the biggest math nightmare ever. Cards are printed to line up with the stats based on their cost, right? And this is just like I'm awkwardly messing everything up on your side of the board.
so can we compare this card to the resist Tiana
What the 1/4 that they can't
with
do other
resist
things?
2?
Yeah, well, this doesn't have to be. This is card's so much better. Like it's not uninkable, so if
Okay,
it's
so
not
this is
good,
presenting like okay. So I said Tiana because of the 4 cost, but this is
yeah,
actually closer to Cogsworth.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. I see. I'm reading what you're putting down now.
So if people are playing grab your swords, this card's terrible, right?
Yeah, sure.
If we're in a situation where people are like shifting Robin Hood,
Yeah,
you're all of a sudden making it so that they can't actually banish some of our
like
characters. So
almost all of them.
like it's very interesting. Like yeah, I have a goat. Oh, sure, attack it with your Robin Hood, whatever. Um yeah, I think, and this card doesn't have to be exerted herself. It's just immediate.
Okay,
So
I
I
can see that.
really like this card. I don't know if it ever makes the deck. I'm not saying this card's like broken by any means, but most
Oh,
people see spoilers and they're like looking at the big bombs. Where you have big bombs in every color, you need to find the position players.
that's fair. See, I
And
hit that button.
if
I hit
she's a
that
cheap
button.
enchanted,
Yeah, I hit that button and then I didn't hit save. So you ruined it. All right. Now we have to fix it.
all that button is supposed to do is go back to the screen you were on.
Lies
Uh,
from here. All right. So we'll add a Amelia for the list for now. Hot potato.
no, I think it's a good card. I think it's a good Disney Lorcana card and
Mhm.
a utility player, but it doesn't serve any purpose that we need for this deck.
Twin fire.
No, I think I put that at a like met. It depends on the meta. Yeah, that meta is gonna have to be like
Similar.
really just breakneck aggro. It's gonna have to go.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm still not sure it'll be good enough.
Yeah,
It would have to be like all 1/1 dot meta, like
it
for
would
this
have to be
card.
like, yeah, games are ending on turn 4 or whatever, turn 5, because it pigeonholes you into having to play it.
Yeah,
You just can't. It's so hard with Doc to ever have uninkables in your hand that
yeah.
aren't just like extremely powerful.
I'm still here.
I don't even know what that card does, so no. Also, we don't play songs.
I don't even know what he does. Nope, it's not that one.
If
All right.
somebody plays that on stream and the encounter, we're cutting to a different match.
No, that's not true. I actually think the card is very good. I don't think it's good in this deck. I was just going to give
Yeah.
you an opportunity. We're playing Fire the Cannons. We're playing Smash. Can we play Unfortunate Situation?
No, we can't play that card.
Yeah,
That
no way,
card,
right? There's
yeah.
just no way.
You know what would be interesting is if you just sorted this by things that cost one or two or three.
We're
I
just
I know we
we're
put
never
Gontu
going
in
above.
there, but we could live without the big stuff.
All right, so this is a 55 card deck now. Okay,
Perfect.
uh,
We'll draw
which
our
is
dock even more.
that's very true. We will draw our dog even more. But with that, we talked about some of these new cards. We're also still missing older cards. Like there might
Right.
be older cards that we actually want in here.
I was gonna
But
say that.
what can the White Rose do for us?
Well, it could win the game out of nowhere. For one, it could win the game out of nowhere. For two, it could actually challenge our opponent's cards, which we have a terrible time of doing. And for three, if we're at a high enough lore, it kind of is the GOAT problem where our opponents will just want to banish that because we could bounce it and win instantly. So it also protects our other cards. Another thing is it challenges locations, which we have a terrible time of doing. Like the Rose on three, Fox on four, all of a sudden takes out a castle on four. Whereas our old game plan was, they didn't play that. We'll just ignore that. That's over in the corner, gaining two lore for some reason.
Uh, our older one was, oh, they played Castle. All right, let's play 3 cards and hope that they live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough time.
um, Genie.
Yeah, so Genie, I think especially now with Diablo is more feasible because we're drawing so many more cards now. Like Kuzco was so important. Melissa bashed my head in with red blue over and over, and it's our best matchup. And
Yeah,
she beat me so bad I threw the deck across the room and said I'm not playing it in Vegas, and you drugged me out of the house. But Kuzco's flipped that like almost entirely. We just
yeah,
had a card that we could play on like our turn 5 or 6, and we didn't care if they be prepped because it would just replace itself. So yeah, the Diablo is serving that purpose now. So we'll get to 4 without a dock more often now,
yeah,
and the Genie also threatens Diablos. Obviously, it sucks that they also draw a card, but whatever, that's just what Diablo does. But yeah, having 4 health I think is big against that deck. And then against anything else, it's just if you draw it later in the game, it's just such an annoying card to remove. And if they do remove it, it feels terrible for them. Such a bad tempo swing.
yeah.
Like we paid
Like,
4, drew a card, they paid 3 and brawled. Like,
yeah, it doesn't feel great. But ironically, I think if you really look at this deck, we're very good against Brawl in general. So,
yes.
like, there's a world where like it turns on their Brawl, but I don't
But if
even know
that's what
that
they're
we
doing,
care. Yeah,
yeah.
like if their turn 4 is Brawl your Genie, and we still have like 3 dudes in play, like I think the game is probably over. So awesome, Yahtzee for us.
Yeah.
I think this card's going to be very good. I think it is. I think it's really unfortunate that I don't know that we can even play more than one of this card.
Yeah.
That's the one danger spot is that if we look at this deck right now and we're only on nine uninkables, which is that's a good place to be. Almost enough reason to say, all right, maybe we can play 2 of these. It'll probably very much depend on where we end up on and like the final cards that we push here. But if it were no other cards that aren't on this right now, I would feel comfortable pushing this to 2 and being like, yeah, okay, like I'll play 2 of that card. Because my biggest fear is that we're going to open up a hand and it's going to be like Doc, fire the cannons, Genie, and we are just stuck. Uh, I think that is like an automatically a game that we are going to lose and we have no control over.
Yeah.
So
I had
that's my
some of those
biggest fear.
games
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah. That's my biggest fear is that we just have way too many uninkables in the deck, and it being a 4 cost could really damper that concept of we can't. The one thing I like about this deck over, like Amber Steel as an example, is that I don't think it has that many beat myself hands. But the more cards that we put in that cost more than three, they can create problems. So I think that that's where like this Captain Amelia for me it becomes a problem. Is that I don't think she wins the game by herself. I don't know that if often enough her like literally her text box is anything at all. So if like her text box is nothing at all and it's completely irrelevant and it doesn't dodge, cards like Medusa, Brawl, and Sisu late in the game, then like it's the worst four ink that we could play ever.
Yeah.
So therefore, I don't think that like for me, it definitely would have to require a metagame that is way more into challenging and things like that for this card to ever even think about seeing play. What I
Yep.
will say to a very random second effect of her is that if we do get into a go-go metagame, then a card like this is interestingly very good. Very weird statement, but it is a true statement that this concept of just having resist across the board, so go-go is just like that much worse, might be relevant. So there's a world where this card does make it into this deck list because it's still inkable. We can get rid of it if we want to, and I think maybe that's a very interesting note. I I, I really want Gantu to be good. I don't know that he's going to be,
I
but
think if he has any shot, it's this.
yeah,
Unless you're a
probably.
just in time player.
Uh, yeah, but I don't even think he's like. I mean,
I,
don't get me wrong. Like he has a lot of lore on him,
yeah.
so Gantu on turn 3 is pretty damn good, I guess. But I don't know. For us, he's definitely not that. We don't need this card on turn 3. We are very comfortable playing this card on turn 6 or 7 and just saying, figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's very interesting. I think I would definitely play this card. I think I'm 100% playing Gantu.
Yeah. We said when we put Amelia in the deck just for this demonstration, it's not a week one card for
Yeah.
sure.
All right, so let's get rid of Amelia.
I hate
See
that
why.
you can't just remove stuff from the other page.
I know it is a bit frustrating. Are we going to be Fairy Ship Believers week 1?
I believe so.
I
I
think so.
really do. I think it's only really bad against Amethyst.
Okay.
Like if they
Um,
can just fox it,
yeah, it
but
feels bad.
there's so many times that you're going into like a mass removal turn and you just are spreading out things that draw cards or playing the library, moving everything in it, and that can just be like that's like why we played Pride Lands in
Right.
in Dallas. It was just like, oh, you're gonna be prep next turn. All right, Pride Lands, flute, Pride Lands. Go ahead.
Yeah, I look at it really weird. I think that if we're just looking for cost per willpower per lore, then that I don't think it's possible. I think there are games where this card will gain 0 lore, but I also think that there are games where this card will gain 5 lore.
Hmm.
And I think those are the games that you're going to look at this card and be like, man, I'm so glad that it's inkable. It is not the ideal one drop. It's not what you want to play on one, but there is a world where if I am, Chernobog's follower on one, and then my turn 2 is Fire the Cannon's Fairy Ship, like that might not be the worst turn ever. So that's kind of how I'm looking at that. Like there's a world where just the idea of like playing that in addition to later on in the game, even with like on your dock turns, if you're just like Diablo Fairy Ship, play dock, draw 2 cards, pass. All of a sudden, you just put 8 willpower in the play that represents 3 lore, and one of those cards replaces themselves. So, like, you did a lot for 4 resources that now your opponent has to interact with in different ways. So, I really think, and we've said this over and over again, Fairy Ship, if it already existed, we would 100% have played that card in Vegas.
Yeah.
So I think now is more or less like I'm comfortable right now in the first couple of weeks of this metagame saying I want this in my deck because I need to know if it's actually like good. And for what it's worth, this is coming from someone that did play Deville Manor for a time. Like, I played that card in Emerald Steel Aggro back in set 3 as a one of or a two of in some of the tournaments that I played in. I think in my set championships, I played one or two of that in the set championships that I won with Emerald Steel. So I'm a believer in the cost for willpower for lore concept. And I do think that fairy ship is representing that concept very, very well. It'll just see if like the metagame, I guess, reciprocates in a way. So let's close this out. Is there any cards in this deck in previous versions that we want to add to it before we lock some numbers in?
Yeah, as much as I think it is the arguably the worst card in the deck, I still can't see myself not playing Maleficent, the one drop. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. It's it can be the most frustrating card to have in your deck, and then it could be the card that you look at two of them in your opening hand and you're like, wow, why did my opponent get out of bed today just to lose to this terrible terrible deck with this terrible card?
Okay. Okay.
They're gonna go home, they're gonna tweet, wow, someone thinks it's set one again. They have Maleficent and fire the cannons.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Yeah, but
I
they're going to
agree.
be going home at 3 p.m. because you knocked them out of the tournament with it.
That's very fair. Anything else? Is Baboom a card that we need?
So I played yesterday 4 Smash, 4 Fire the Cannons, 2 Baboom. And I think if you don't have Maleficent on turn 1, it is just like way too much. It's like, it's overkill of removal. You end up drawing hands where you could kill everything the first 3 turns, but then your opponent's 4 drop is better than everything in your entire deck. So it didn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then like, yeah, if you can ride Maleficent, if you can just go Maleficent, Boom, Snake, Quest, Snake, Maleficent, stuff like that, then it looks like an all-star. But yeah, I would not play Baboom again.
All right.
And 2 is only twice as much as 1, but it feels like infinitely more than 1 when you have 16 one drops and you always are hoping to have an extra inks at some point. So
I agree. I agree. Is there anything else?
nothing that I would feel bad about missing. Let me look in my decks. Oh, I'm being verified. Yeah, I think Pascal is gone.
Yep.
Way too much Diablos. Like if your opponent just plays a 1/2 Diablo, you can't quest with
You can literally
Pascal.
never quest with Pascal.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Pascal used to be the all-star.
Yeah.
Gathering knowledge and wisdom is just the uninkable is just too much of a killer. No matter how many free games you got from it.
Yeah.
And then Mickey Food Fight Defender. I think that is like if you know that you're playing against all steel, it's a no-brainer. It has to go into your deck, but I don't know that that's. I wouldn't think that that's like a week 1 thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just fill it out with more Chernobog's followers if we're
All right.
down any cards.
So we want four of the sorceress or four of the Maleficent
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
All right. So that puts us at 58.
Boom, 2 followers. Thank you everyone for watching the
Hold
video.
on. Hold on. Hold on. We do not want more than one rose.
Right. I think just a 5th goat.
Just fifth rose. Do we want a second genie?
No.
We
Especially not
want
with Maleficent.
one
Actually,
genie.
how many uninkables are we up to with the Maleficents? Because
13. And we play genie.
yeah. Yeah, if only we play tested before
No,
recording
that's the
this
point of
video.
this. It's putting that process. It's putting that process. I guess
I
my
know.
question is, uh, am
If
I willing to risk playing Genie with 13 uninkables?
So I'm gonna say we're playing the Genie because if I have two roses in my hand, I feel just as bad as a rose and a Genie,
Sure.
right? Like, I don't think people that have never actually played the deck before, I don't think they can comprehend just like drawing two goats feels like a death sentence.
Hmm.
Like just drawing multiple things. If your opening hand has like three cards that cost three or more and you don't have a dock, you are like walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
And no other deck has felt like this before
Yeah.
in Lorcana for me.
Very fair. All right. So we stick at one. We're just gonna go up our Turnabogs. Is that what we're doing?
I would say one Chernobog's and one pirate ship. That
You
like,
want a second ferry ship?
yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can agree to that.
Well, you're the boss. You signed the imaginary paychecks.
Let's just let's just let's just let's just go through
Yeah.
this one time. All right. So, oh, hold on. All right. So, is there anything that we are potentially overlooking? All right. So we. What
I'm
about
just
Chromacon? Does this deck need Chromacon now?
no.
No
That's
Chromacon.
no. It draws even more cards than it used to.
I agree. We don't want to gamble on a gathering.
And I mean, if you ever draw a gathering before you dock, it's so frustrating. Like
Does feel pretty
you
bad.
have to play it. You just can't.
Forbidden Mountain. No. Okay.
No. I wish.
Cusco.
I do like me a Kuzco, but the stats to cost ratio is just not doing it for me.
It's not there.
If I knew for a fact I'm playing like a 6 round tournament and five of those rounds are blue red, I'm playing four Kuzco.
That's very fair. We talked about this guy. We talked about Happy. Well, we didn't talk about Happy. We're not playing those cards though.
No,
Um, I think that's going to be it. I think we talked about Baboom, but it's not going to be a Baboom day. What about Hook?
no, we're not challenging.
Not challenging. All right, so no
No,
Hook, no Zimba, right?
no, no,
All right,
no
all
Zimba, no
right,
Zimba.
all right. So we're just playing a second fairy ship, and this
I
is it.
mean, you could put in another followers. We'll
I
leave it
could,
up to the viewer.
I could. All right,
Just presenting the fairy ship at some points, it's just a lightning rod, or they ignore it and it just passively gains one lore.
maybe, maybe. All right, so let's take a look what this looks like now. All right, so here it is. This is our week one character base here. Um, it's a 4 of everything except 3 followers, and then 1 white rose, which is effectively our fourth goat, or I'm sorry, our fifth goat. 1 genie, and then 1 Gantu, and then everything else is 4 of cannons, 4 smash, 4 library, and 2 fairy ship. I will
Looks beautiful.
say, yeah, I mean, this is so the point of this exercise, right? As I said at the beginning, was we're talking about building this with the information in mind, understanding that we 100% still need fire the cannons and smash. And the idea for that is just it's very much a move the game forward by removing our opponent's character with cards that are protected from Ursula 2. Uh, I scarily think that even if Ursula 2 was not represented in the metagame, we would maybe not play Smash, and play Strength of a Raging Fire. But I think we would still always be playing Fire the Cannons, and we would never ever play Let the Storm Rage on. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
We would
Like I
also play
think
more one drops though if we played the strength. We can't just swap that.
Uh,
I think
so
sometimes we're gonna have to go one drop and then turn to one drop, one drop.
I think my only reason for strength in theory would be games where I'm just going to Pete on 3. So if my line is just always going to be Pete on 3, and my turn 4 play is just going to be sing with my Pete. So I'll just remove literally anything in the game with Pete because I'm just going to play out my hand, and then I'm just going to exert, kill their guy with Pete, and then move on with life. That's the only argument that I would have. But in this argument, if I'm not playing Smash to play Strength of a Raging Fire, it means that every turn 3 I must play a Pete, and I must not have Strength of a Raging Fire in my hand until turn 4. That's why we don't do it.
Yeah.
But if you told me I could script every game out that way, I would do it that way every time. That's not going to happen, guys. But yeah, so this is what it looks like, our week 1 deck. And this is really just targeted at an aggressive metagame that gives us the best opportunity to be good into Amber Steel that, might be developing its own new things. This is going to be our best shot, hopefully, against Emerald Steel. Definitely against opponents that might not understand the matchup that well. This deck should still, without a doubt, crush Ruby Sapphire and Ruby Amethyst. I think both of those are like almost free wins. The one concern about Mr. Arrow, of course, is if Human Sisu comes out in high numbers, it's not going to feel as good playing this card on the draw. So maybe you just have to understand that on the play. This card's still amazing, but on the draw, probably not as good. You're going to be leaning more towards your followers, your SMEs, and things like that, and just to get stats on in play. Because if you're just like I don't know, Broom or something like that on one, and then they don't really do anything effective, so your Fire the Cannons is useless, and then you play a Mr. Arrow, all of a sudden, if they're just like Human Sisu, your Mr. Arrow, it's going to feel really terrible. So I think on the draw against Ruby decks, there's a chance that this card is just ink early on in the game. Later in the game, we don't give a shit. We just want to put lore in play and like make them have it. But we definitely can't afford to lose tempo by playing this card on the draw in the Ruby Sapphires. Dick, this is our day 1 deck. If we were playing this weekend, either you or I would suit this deck up and kind of report on it and move forward with it. I do like the idea of what this looks like right now. I think I'm comfortable with the numbers. I'm very much okay with spreading out the love of like trying multiples of these cards, seeing if Gantu can stick, and seeing if White Rose is just worth it as a spot. And you know what the truth is? I don't know how honest this is, but there's a world where these numbers also get flipped a little bit. Like maybe the correct answer is playing 3 goat, 2 roses. Like there could be scenarios where that happens moving forward. But really, it's just looking for a proof of concept of is the White Rose good enough by itself. Any additions there?
No, I love it. It looks great. Scotland disapproved. There's a bunch of 1-ups.
Scotland approved. So if you like this type of content and how we built this deck for you for week 1, we have an entire Metafy guide on this deck. It's literal evolution from day 1 when we started with it until now. This is something that we have been continuously adding to over the week since we joined Metafy. And, moving into Azurite Sea, we're going to be impacting this even more. So right now, the guide only costs $10. So if you go in, you buy the guide for $10, you're going to have it forever. But as we move more into the metagame, Dick and I are going to be doing more of this. We're going to be focusing on some gameplay coming up, showcasing this deck against other matchups. And specifically, once we know what the metagame matchups are, we're going to be adding chapters to it that are going to be focusing on the matchups into it, discussing what are the lines we need to do to win, what are the lines that we need, what are the mulligan guides and things like that. So we're going to be adding a bunch to this guide over the course of the first few weeks leading up to, EU for the Continentals or the CCS 10K, all the way up leading into Anaheim for our Continentals and things like that. So the guide is actually going to jump in price. So this is going to be the last week before Azurite Sea release that's going to be $10. So if you like this kind of information, if you want to hear more about this deck and you believe in this deck, I would attack the Metafy this week, pick it up for $10, because next week by this time might be $20. Trying to save you guys all some money, give you guys some realism here of how this is going to work, because the more we put into it, the more I think it's going to be worth it for new players. But we also want to reward the players that kind of buy in early. So thank you guys so much for watching today. If you do enjoy this content, make sure you hit like for me. Make sure if you haven't yet, you enjoyed the vibe of me and Dick Burns here, you come and check out the stream this weekend. We are streaming the encounter, and we have a bonus day of streaming with the entire team and maybe some other members of the community. They're going to come and join us as well. I can't confirm anyone yet, but there might be some cool people coming. We'll see. We'll have to wait and find out. But nonetheless, thank you so much for joining me today, Dick. You are the Lorcana villain's biggest fan, which he needs more of those. So I hope that this is like really good for him, and maybe you bridge the gap a little bit with him. Are
You
we
know,
worried about that
I
at all?
drank I drank the tea, as they
Right.
say.
Okay, yeah,
So
okay. I'm glad I didn't, but for another day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.